Hello friends, welcome to my channel Economica. I, Dr. Gopal B. Saraswat, welcome you all to my channel. Today's topic of discussion is research process. Because the research process gives you a systematic step-wise process through which you can achieve the objectives of a research. So let's start the video and find out what are these research steps are. In the research process, the first step is management dilemma, where a management has to take a decision, and for that decision making, you require research. Because a decision which seems to be a dilemma right now required to convert it into a research decision. So whether you are looking to have a basic research or applied research, that you have to first identify here in this first method. Second step is the defining research problem. Then the formulating the research hypothesis. So in these two steps, you define your problem and then you formulate certain assumptions. Then moving to the developing research proposal, where because most of the time especially in the student life, you prepare a research proposal to submit for your academic research. And in the business research, you prepare a proposal and you submit the same proposal towards the client. Once the proposal is approved, then only you can start with your research. Then moving ahead to the next step, that is research framework and the research design, where you plan for your data collection, you plan for your questionnaire or a survey design, you plan for your pilot testing and further for the sampling. Post that, you start for data collection. Once the data is collected, you refine it, code it, tabulate it and prepare it for the further analysis. This further analysis will take place in the next step, that is data analysis and interpretation. And finally, the last step is research reporting or the management research decision. So these are the different steps in the research process. Let's discuss each step of the research process one on one. The first step is management dilemma. A research need to be triggered by the need and desire to know more. So being a researcher, your thrust of knowing more gives initiation or a motivation to a researcher to start a research. This need might be merely because you want to discover or you want to reinstate some relationships. This research may be for the purpose of your academic reason, or you want to have a new perspective of existing phenomena. So this may be a cause for conducting a research, or this may be a dilemma you are facing right now which motivates you towards research. Research may be required to take immediate management decision. You are facing a decisions to make in your business settings, and here your decision seems to be a dilemma whether to take or not. For example, a soft drink manufacturer might want to test acceptability of fruit juices in their portfolio. Whether the company should start with the fruit juices or the company should go with alone with the carbonated drinks. So this may be a dilemma for a business. So when you face a dilemma, you face uncertainty, you start and initiate a research. The second step in the research process is finding the research problem. Under this, you define a research problem and you try to have different objectives throughout the research and try to achieve it. For example, in our day-to-day life, we come across different problems. We have to make certain decisions. But each decision is not a research problem. But sometimes, whenever we face a dilemma, we create a decision into a research decision. For example, in the area of work-life balance, a researcher might be looking at the impact of work-family conflict upon turnover intentions. And by doing so, the researcher looking on a aspect where work-life conflict, how it is going to have an impact upon the turnover of the company. So this is the second step. The third step is formulating the research hypothesis, where a researcher has certain assumptions and during the course of research, researcher willing to test these assumptions or the hypothesis. So hypothesis is generally assumptions or certain expectation which gives direction to the result of your research. For example, it might be a hypothesis that the research might be oriented towards testing a direct relationship between a work-life conflict and a turnover intention. You can hypothesize, you can say work-life conflict do impact the turnover intentions of a company. You test it and the final outcome of the result will tell you whether your assumptions were right or wrong, whether they were true or false. Next step is developing research proposal. As I mentioned in the beginning of my video that you pursue academic research and you require to submit a research proposal at your academic institution. In case of business research, being a research company or research agency, you have to submit the proposal to the client for whom you are conducting a research. So once the management dilemma where you started with your research is converted into a problem or hypothesis, the next step is to come up with a plan of investigation. And this plan of investigation is known as research proposal. The reason for placing this research proposal and the step before the other step is because here a researcher is bounded and committed towards achieving the objective of research proposal. So whatever you have proposed here in this research proposal, this provide a direction to the future research that you start after this. Next step is research design formulation. Now a researcher have chosen a type of research he or she is willing to initiate with, maybe applied or basic. Moving ahead, now you have to choose whether your research will be exploratory research, descriptive research design, causal research design, longitudinal research design, or what sort of research you are willing to undertake. This method gives a clear indication of process of systematically controlling variable under the study. Because the type of research design you choose here will let you know what are the variables you will come across with and how you need to control these variables, whether you are looking to find a cause and effect relationship or you are looking to find a relationship only or maybe a directional relationship between the variables. So research design gives you a framework where you can provide foundation to your research. Next step, sampling design. Sample is something that is a part of a huge population or you can say the part of population. This refers to how one goes about making an investigation of the respondent population which you are looking to study, and as we are aware you are not able to study the whole population in one go. Therefore, you divide population in subgroups and you create sample out of these subgroups. So sample designs lets you understand the overall behavior of a population by just taking the responses from a sample, studying it, analyzing it, and representing the whole population through the single sample. There are different techniques of sampling. You have to choose what is suitable as a researcher for your study. You identify your sampling technique and go ahead with it. So You have to have a sample design which minimizes the probability of error and maximizes the degree of precision in your study. Once you have decided your sample, the next step comes is the data collection. Under this, the researcher required to decide based upon the sampling technique whether the researcher is willing to have a survey. If survey, then the primary data will be collected from the respondents. Or if your study is based upon a cause and effect relationship, or you are dealing with certain data which is already collected by someone else. For example, you are studying the impact of Indian growth rate upon the stock market. So here cause and effect relationship, but data is not generated by you. This data is generated by the government. So you download this data from the website of the government, and that is the secondary data. So you are just reusing the data which is already available for in the public domain. So the type of data collection technique you are applying here, you have to finalize. Further, once the data is collected through survey, you require to edit, refine, and remove any kind of irregularities available in the data. Because once the data is refined and prepared, then only you can apply statistical tools. Once the data is refined and prepared, the next step is data analysis and interpretation of findings. Under this step, you will come up with the univariate, bivariate, multivariate analysis and try to examine a single variable, two variable, or more than two variable relationship, cause and effect within the study. There are various statistical tools available, but which one to apply depend upon the nature of your data, nature of the variable, objective of the study, and the hypothesis. Finally, the last step in the research process is research reporting. At this step, researcher prepares a formal report on the study he undertook and present and publish it so that the outcome of the research can be provided to the client in case of you are a research agency. And if you are pursuing academic research, this outcome of the research report can be published and submitted to your academic institution. At this level, researcher has to make sure that no ambiguity and the biasness should prevail while reporting the research results, so that the what is the outcome you arrive at by applying the different statistical or different analytical tools on the data has to be reported truthfully without any bias. In the research process, we come across with the different research steps, and these process of research have a very vast scope of application. You can apply the same research process in the marketing functions, human resource, finance, accounting, production, and even for cross-functional research. The steps of the research will remain the same, but the attitude you are having to conduct a research through these research process or the research steps will overall going to change once you choose a particular domain for the research. But the soul of the research process or the framework for the research process will remain the same. Finally, how you will know that this is a good research study? There are certain characteristics to it. It must be having a clear and stated purpose. Your objectives must be clear. There should not be any ambiguity while reporting your objectives. Second, your research must follow a systematic plan, and The techniques of data collection, sampling, data analysis, and even the research design must be logically justified. Further, the result of your study must be presented in unbiased manner. Further, the researcher must respect the right of the respondent and no respondent right must be violated. Your aim for this research must be ethical, justifiable with your objectives, and the research outcomes must be replicable. You can replicate your research outcome again and again, and you can arrive at the uh, research outcomes in the different settings by applying it as a model, as a theory. So these are the different features of a good research.